Hi, Phil Aston here from Now Spinning Magazine with another episode of 16 in 1975. This is a series when I pick albums from 1975 that were part of my transition from being at school to entering the world of work and what was going on around me at the time. So this is not just about the album and the tracks, but it's also about what was going on in my life. So I'm sharing stories here that may resonate and may not, but it's just my personal feelings and what was happening. This one is all about Ritchie Blackmore's Rainbow. I have covered this in a previous video, so there may be some overlap, but I'm going to try and ensure that that video still remains unique. And this one is kind of like added value, I hope. The album was recorded or finished recorded on March the 14th. This means a lot to me because that was when my birthday, I was going to say was, still is actually. But the album came out in September the 5th, I think it was, in 1975. So that was literally when I started work. So I had left school in July, couldn't find a job. Applied for loads of things, failed, was terrible at the interviews. All my friends were slowly getting work, all working in factories. As I said before, nobody from my year at school went to college or university. It was apprenticeships in factories, and that was your lot, really. And I eventually found a job in a electrical contractors that went around lots of factories in the West Midlands. And it's a bit different when you leave school and you're kind of like head of you're the big kid, aren't you, the last year, and then you enter work and you're at the bottom again and you're completely out of your comfort zone. Ritchie Blackmore's Rainbow. He left Deep Purple. Couldn't believe it. I was outraged that someone else was coming in to replace him. There'll be more stories about Tommy Bolin and Come Taste the Band in another episode. But I had no interest in that, really. I wanted to know what Blackmore was going to do. Ritchie Blackmore in 1975 in the UK was the guitarist. Yes, as I've said in another episode, physical graffiti was everywhere. But for many of us, me included, what was Ritchie Blackmore going to do next? Of course, when he recorded this, Deep Purple was still functioning and still playing what was going to be gigs that would later appear on Made in Europe. But towards September, and I'm still at an age where if my mum and dad are going into Birmingham, I'll catch a lift with them. I still, I wasn't ready. Literally weeks away from catching the bus everywhere when I started work. But this time, my mum and dad are going to town. I'll go to town. I remember being in the Bullring in Birmingham, and it was going past a newsagent that sold records, and there was a huge poster. Can you see that? A huge poster in the window of this photograph of Ritchie Blackmore, which is one of my, you just about see that, can't you? It's one of my favourite images of Ritchie Blackmore, that is. And it was a massive poster because this was big news. Ritchie Blackmore had got a band called Rainbow, and they were going to release a debut album. And this picture, this photograph of Ritchie, was everywhere. And I used to listen to the Alan Freeman show on a Saturday afternoon, and after Alan Freeman, there was the John Peel show where he basically played tracks from new albums. And he, on this particular one, so it must have been around that time, September time, Ritchie Blackmore was on, and they were going to play 2 tracks from this album. And I remember thinking when Ritchie Blackmore spoke was how posh he sounded, because remember, I'd never heard him talk. I'd seen him in 1974 on the Burn tour. I hadn't seen the California Jam video yet, wasn't out. So where would I hear Ritchie Blackmore talking? There was no YouTube. There was no mysterious person Ritchie Blackmore was going to talk, and he did, and he sounded quite posh. And John Peel played 2 tracks. He played Man on a Silver Mountain and 16th Century Greensleeves. And Man on a Silver Mountain was just perfect, wasn't it? I know live it was 4 times the speed, but I preferred this pace because it had that kind of Smoke on the Water-ish feel to the riff. Very clever riff and a great pounding 4/4 rhythm. And I'll just briefly move towards 16th Century Greensleeves and the tremolo arm on the entrance to the solo and the lyrics and everything. And then I have to talk about the secret weapon that was in Rainbow at this stage, and that was Ronnie James Dio. I'd seen Ronnie James Dio in Elf supporting Deep Purple, and it didn't register what Ronnie James Dio was like as a vocalist in Elf. But immediately on hearing this album and these 2 tracks, I understood the prowess, the delivery, the way he ad-libbed on lyrics, on words, especially on the end of Man on a Silver Mountain, Taking You Higher, Fire. They might be obvious words to stick, but the way he did it, the pacing and the delivery was just perfect. And I couldn't wait to get this album. And I'm trying to think now, I was probably on the cusp of just starting that job, because I remember the first place I went to was a factory in Witten, the GEC, massive factory. And I was put with a team of guys who seemed to be instantly bored at breakfast time and lunchtime, and the only entertainment they had was actually playing jokes on the apprentices in various ways, which they must have thought was really funny. But as an apprentice, it was hell. It was absolutely hell. And I bought this album, and I bought it from W.H. Smith's in Mell Square in Solihull, and I was with my friend Paul Mansell, who's sadly no longer with us. And when I bought it, I think it was about £3.25, I think it was. And I sat on the edge of the waterfall outside the shop, and we were looking at it, because obviously some of these pictures are when he was with Purple. And Paul was going, I've heard it's the cross between Led Zeppelin and Deep Purple. So it wasn't quite. But I got it home, and it's on the Oyster label. And I played Man on a Silver Mountain. The guitar solo, the guitars are slightly back in the mix. I always felt that compared with Purple. But I love the, I don't know what Man in a Silver Mountain is. Is it a wizard? I just believed it. You know, playing fire and all this, and I just believed it. Self-Portrait, love the jangly guitar solo on that. Black Sheep of the Family, apparently a cover version. He left Purple because they wouldn't do it himself. Really? It's okay. Catch the Rainbow, homage towards Jimi Hendrix and Little Wing, but just a beautiful song. Beautiful song. Snake Charmer. Here we are, we're back in action. Great, you know. Was this song really about Ritchie Blackmore from Ronnie James Dio's perspective? Great delivery though in the vocals. Snake Charmer. Oh, and the guitars on it. A bit of, you know, feels like a bit of tremolo action there as well. Temple of the King, which decades later would become a showcase for tremendous guitar playing. But here we were hearing Ritchie Blackmore play acoustic guitar for perhaps the second time after Soldier of Fortune. If you don't like rock and roll, I love rock and roll, but this was the weakest point of the album to me. Although it's okay. It's Ritchie Blackmore. I was not going to miss it out. Anyone with that piano solo. 16th Century Greensleeves, of course. Great riff, became a live favourite. Wonderful storyline. Typical of Ronnie James Dio's kind of mystical, medieval, dragon, fiery fairy tale stuff. Wonderful. And then, Still I'm Sad. For anyone who thought that the album was kind of not what they expected, not as hard and heavy, because Ritchie's left Deep Purple. Deep Purple did Stormbringer. That was a bit like, where were they going? What were Deep Purple going to do? Ritchie Blackmore now had the gloves off. Was he going to deliver a full-on hard rock album? Sort of. But this, I feel, still I'm sad. There'll be many Ritchie Blackmore fans out there that would have hoped that this, maybe at some point in his career, he would have released an album of instrumentals like this. I mean, over his career, there are various instrumental tracks which are sublime. And I always felt that whatever he does, Ritchie, you don't need to do Rainbow, but you have time to do an instrumental album, or somebody to compile the instrumental tracks that Ritchie has played on, of which this is a great one. Of course, many of us recognise the way that he'd rearranged Still I'm Sad by the Yardbirds, that he was using the kind of riff that he'd used on the U401 live track, the live variation of that track, that kind of staccato opening, which I think was never bettered from live in London. But this was that start. So I recognised it as the beginning of U401 live. And it has such a soaring, melodic, empowering guitar line. And then when we reach that middle bit, when of course we're in this period of Ritchie Blackmore's lead guitar playing, when he plays the really fast triplets over on one string, on one note. But it's just Ritchie Blackmore. When anyone did that, that's Blackmore. And the guitar solo is incredible. And then we reach towards the end and Shona comes in with the backing vocals, almost inaudible, but there's something there. It's not a guitar, it's not keyboards, it's a human voice. And it's just amazing. It's just amazing. And that to me was like, that's it. It's great, it's good, it's good, it's great, it's great. And now it's everyone should have one. This was what made Ritchie Blackmore. He'd never done this before. It was like that shreddy bit out of U401, but with a band surrounding it. And of course, it became something else live when vocals were added and everything. But I've mentioned before on this series a phrase that called active listening, where you are completely immersed in the music. And there is no tape recorders, as I've said before. There's no devices to stick your music on. The only device to put your music on is a turntable or in your head, in your memory. That's the only two places to go. You might have a tape deck, but you more than likely, whatever else, when you go around in your life in 1975, the only way you can take music with you is in here. This was an absolute lifesaver for me. Because the Man on a Silver Mountain especially, I don't really know what that was about, but you've got to take me back to being a 16-year-old kid. And Man on a Silver Mountain, this person sounded like a superhero. It sounded like someone who was like a protector, someone who would rescue you. I know some of you are watching this saying, what? You've got to try and take you back to where I was. I'm at work. I'm getting up at an hour in the day that I didn't even know existed after leaving school and all the rest of it. But I'm working in this factory. I'm trying to fit in with I've said before, blokes who are like my dad. Was my dad like this when he was working at the Rover? Did he treat apprentices like this? Was it just because I'd run out of places to apply for and I'd ended up working for a company where they seemed to say yes to anyone, taking anybody on? Was it my fault? But I remember every time it was break time, I dreaded it. I absolutely dreaded break time. And obviously as an apprentice, my job was to go down all the way down through the lift, down through the factory floor to get the teapot and the cups and all the rest of it. And And I know that when I came back, once everyone had had the tea, they would then pick on the apprentices, either give us dead legs or a punch here and there, or stick a rusty bolt in our sandwiches that Mum had made. It was obviously, it was hilarious, but obviously it wasn't, was it? And on the way down to that, I would have Man on a Silver Mountain playing in my head, especially the fade, and I would add my own variations of the lyrics and stuff, and it kind of made me feel stronger. So when I came back up and there were rusty bolts in my sandwiches, I just try and, I didn't laugh it off because that would just probably make it worse, but I just thought, I can do this, I can cope with this, because I have my music in my head. This music will get me through this. And on going home on the bus afterwards, I'd have the music playing in my head. Again, there's no Walkman, it's in my head. And then I could get home, covered in crap and stuff, and go upstairs, say hello to my mum and dad. My dad would say, "How was work?" It's fine. Obviously it wasn't. And then I'd go upstairs, take this out the sleeve, and place it on the record player. This is the Oyster record label, the original from 1975, the one I actually bought from Smith's in September. Place that on, lower the needle, turn up the volume, and just immerse myself in it again. Let the neural networks in my brain absorb more of the melody, more of the guitar inflections, more of the vocals, and let it soak in to re-energize, ready for, the next day. And it was tough. I've mentioned this many times, and I think that it was the shock to the system, really, of all the aspirations I had of what I was going to do with my life, whether I was going to play guitar, what I was going to do, what I thought I was going to do. I was supposed, I had this image that the electricians walked around with a white coat and a little screwdriver in their top pocket. I had no idea what working in some of these factories were like. And some of the other apprentices had it far worse than me. Very, very, very much so. But I'm making out that music kind of like got me through 100%. It was a struggle, because I got home and I was so tired. It was a very physical job, and I just wasn't used to it. Instead of thinking I went out to the pub afterwards, I wasn't. I was 16, so I'd come home and I'd literally play my music for a bit and I'd fall asleep. I was absolutely exhausted, and I remember my mum coming in to see me when I was like falling asleep, going to bed. And she said, how's work? Are you enjoying it? And I went, yeah, it's good. And she went out of the room, and I just burst into tears. It was so not good. I was so unhappy. I couldn't believe that this was going to be it for 4 years, apparently. And what to say, my dad thinks I've done well getting an apprenticeship, and it was just terrible. As I say, some of the other apprentices had really, really, really horrific time, really. So you have to make do. You have to look for ways through things. You have to see each day as a little victory. You have to see each moment as like, how can I adapt? What can I do? How do I can't fight this. If you answered people back, that was not the right thing to do. But you know what? It was music. To some of the blokes, I was just this little skinny kid who seemed to struggle carrying a ladder. It was just irritating until they were talking about music one day, a couple of them were, and they talked about Bad Company, and someone said about Rainbow, and I went, I've got that. And there was a silence. What? You've got it? Yeah, I've got that. What, you listen to that? Yeah, I do. I've got it. It didn't fix everything by a long shot, because there were a lot of other blokes who didn't listen to that. But the ones that did, it gave them a different slant on me. And so, well, he likes Ritchie Blackmore's Rainbow. Leave him alone. He's all right, Phil is. It just gave me an edge. Not perfect, but it gave me an edge. And the music on this album, how would I rank it in my Rainbow albums? Have I done one of those? I haven't, have I? Rainbow Rising is obviously the classic, and I've done a massive video on that. Obviously, Tarot Woman, side 2, is 10 out of 10. The other 3 tracks, I wouldn't give 10 out of 10 to, but I like it. Long Live Rock and Roll's good. I would say that this is probably my most played Rainbow album. It's the most varied, and it's the first, and it's the one that we haven't had a deluxe edition for, but I wish we could. I would hope that's possible one day. I mean, the band was going out live. There's no live recordings in this period, is there? And I find it quite hard to believe that no one dared record them. And it'd be good if there was. But no, I think it's even the cover, with the Walt Disney castle made out of a guitar is lovely, really. And the trend of putting the lyrics to one track on, etc. But yeah, Still I'm Sad and Man on a Silver Mountain, those songs still resonate with me. And I think that whoever you are out there, music can give you courage and the imagination to lift you up and see things in a very different way. That this too will pass, that you will get the other side of this. And that's what this album did and does, especially Man on a Silver Mountain. I could imagine, as I walked around that factory, I had Ronnie James Dio and the Man on a Silver Mountain follow me around like a force field to make sure that it was going to be okay. Because I thought, I'm not going to be here for long. I'm not going to be here for long. I'm going to find a way through this. I'm going to find a way out of this. And these people are not my people. These are not the people I have to try and appease or be friends with or be bullied by. This is going to change. This too will pass. And my ticket out of here will be music. Thank you for watching. Thank you for being here. Thank you for supporting me. Thank you for becoming patrons and YouTube members and buying the merch. And also, it's been great to see many of you at the Now Spinning Arms virtual pub where we meet up as well. Remember, music is the healer and the doctor. I really mean that. So thank you for being with me on this journey. Thank you for all of your messages and emails. It means a great deal to me. Let me know what you think of this album in the comments. Take care, all of you, and I'll talk to you all very, very soon.